there's certain cars that no matter what the mileage is, they're just going to, you know, hold their value so well because of the experience they provide, this being one of them.
I mean, if I had this, I would drive it every day.
I would daily drive this car.
997.2 GT3 RS.
It's one of my favorite cars of all time, and it's one of those cars that you don't really appreciate until you drive it, and it freaks you out a little bit how fast it is. And
100%.
The experience you get with this car, I mean, the new cars are phenomenal cars, don't get me wrong, but this is just pure, in my opinion, this is like the last generation of like just absolutely balls to the walls car.
Yeah. Well, it's like, you know, Jay often says the last days of old technology are better than the first days of new technology, and I feel like that this pretty much exemplifies that. I mean, this was the last GT3 RS with hydraulic steering.
Yep.
It was the last GT3 RS besides the 4.0 after this car.
With the Metzger.
With the Metzger engine, but also with a 6-speed manual.
Right. Yeah, you get that full experience. And
yeah.
The exhaust note that this car makes is just...
It's ridiculous.
I mean, it almost... You would think, honestly, and, you know, Nick, who owns the car, every time he drives this, he's convinced, you know, when we open the valves, put it in sport mode, that it has an aftermarket exhaust. Yeah. And it doesn't. It actually, it just sounds that absurd.
It does.
And it truly does sound like, I don't even know how would you describe it. You know, obviously, video doesn't do it justice, but...
It's very motorsporty.
Yeah, it's very motorsporty. Video doesn't do it justice, but when you're in the car, it's just like comically loud. It's
yeah. I mean, you get the sound so much better because, you know, there's less sound deadening in this car for one. That loud exhaust.
Right.
I mean, upgraded headers to the regular car as well. Yeah. Also, lightweight glass back there, so you're getting all just the sound coming through the cabin so much more. But it's not only that. From the outside, it's really loud, too.
Oh, it's absurd. This car being, what, 2011-ish?
Yeah, 2011.
This is the era. Yeah, this is the era of the time when Porsche, you know, people they didn't really care about the paint assemble. They didn't really care about, like, you know, the flex of owning this car. This car was made purely for people who really enjoy driving. Not that the new cars aren't, they are. But this car,
it's less
catered to a very specific person in a very
pre-Instagram,
pre any of that. Yeah. It was just to enjoy driving and enjoy the experience. And you know, it's very stripped interior. The technology is kind of funny it was ahead of its time back then, but you know, obviously there's
very dated screen.
Very dated, and none of that matters.
No.
Because when you drive this car, it's all about one thing, and that is exactly that, driving. And you're seeing these cars now. There's a few places that take these cars, they change the colors, they do. They've really, I would say in the past, 2-3 years, this specific car, the 3.8, which is more quote-unquote attainable than the 4.0, because the 4.0 sold for anywhere from $600,000 to $1 million.
One of them just sold on Bring a Trailer for like $750,000.
Yeah.
Just recently. I mean, just absurd.
So those cars are unobtainium, and these are still, you know, they're extremely expensive, but for what you get for it, you know, when you drive it, we have the privilege of being able to drive these cars.
Yeah.
It really is everything that, if you enjoy driving, it provides. I mean,
it's so good.
So much fun to drive. You get that visceral experience of the handling. I mean, it's just...
It's super satisfying because, you know, the new cars are great, like you said, but you have to make this do all the great things.
Right.
It's not like you get in the new car and it does most of it for you and you feel good, but this is very rewarding when you get the shift right.
Yeah, you do it right.
When you downshift it right, when you feel the weight transfer, when you really get after it. I mean, this is a car that requires a lot of concentration to drive too.
Yeah.
But that's what makes it fun.
Yeah.
Oh. So good. This has the optional racing bucket seats. You could get this car with the sofas. These seats now, I mean, you look at Bring a Trailer, people are selling them because you could get this in the GT3, the GT3 RS, and the Boxster Spider of the time. They're anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 for a set of these seats, which is crazy.
Yeah. What are you putting them in? You're putting them in your Mini?
I could put them in I'll put them in my Boxster.
The seats are more valuable than the car.
It's worth more than my Boxster.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that's the thing. I think these, when you look at like quote, what we do with young timers, what we do with that generation of car, I think this specific car, not only have we seen what it's going to do, but I think it's only going to continue that because it really provides, as more people get exposed to it, and they're so limited. I mean, you look today, like the ST, the 911 ST, they made 1,963 of them.
Yep.
They made like half. I can't even remember. Do you remember the exact number?
No, I don't know the exact number. We'll put it here. It's a much lower
very
production
low
number,
and comparatively to what they do today, this would be extremely limited.
Oh yeah. That's what makes it more special, though. I mean, that's not even full throttle or red light.
No.
That's so good. Well, it's also like, in a world now, you have like the Ferrari 296 GTB, or, we just drove the McLaren Artura Spider on the channel, which I actually really liked for a modern supercar.
Yeah.
This has only 450 horsepower.
Right.
But it feels so much faster than that.
It feels so much faster, and it goes back to the, what people say is, you can have 1,000 horsepower, you can have 2,000 horsepower, whatever. That's
what are you
fun,
do with that,
but you can't. It's not usable for what we do, especially. For you and I, we're mostly. Well, you take motorcycles on the track. I don't. But for me, this experience of driving on these roads with this car is just perfect.
Oh yeah.
And you could take it to shows. You could go on long drives. I would have no problem taking this, on a long drive and going.
No,
to
it's
Vermont
actually
or whatever.
For tightened suspension and a wider track and all that fun stuff, it's actually a pretty comfortable car, all things considered.
Right.
Of course, yeah, it's a little bit stiffer than the 911 Carrera of this generation.
Sure. But
it's not like it's unusable.
Well, to me too, it's the perfect size. You park this next to the current generation of 911, it looks like the Suburban that. The new 911 looks like the Suburban that's filming us.
Yeah.
Compared to this. I mean, they're huge.
I agree.
And although they do a brilliant job with the current generation,
they do.
This to me is the right size. I grew up, when this came out, I was 21. It was like, I vividly remember it, and to me, that will always stick with me. I think everyone has that generation of car when they're really starting to get to know cars and learn about them.
Well, this is my favorite generation of car too, because
of 911.
It's my favorite generation of 911. I think it's the most perfect 911 because of the combination of just enough tech, but also still using quote unquote old school, drivetrain and technology.
I would completely agree with that.
But it's my favorite era. I think it's my favorite era of cars, like the 2008 to, or 2006 to like 2013 rather, because there were so many great cars that came out that 458 Speciale. This car, you had the 4-liter. I mean, I love the Boxster Spider, the Cayman R. All of those like really like driver focused cars that still focused on shifting and driver enjoyment before kind of all of the paddle shifter tech and electrification took over. And I understand why the electrification is happening. I mean, maybe it's not our favorite thing, but we can't really go away from the hybridization and whatnot, but this just feels so pure to me.
Well, it feels alive.
It does.
I think that's the biggest way to describe it. This feels like its own thing. It's its own creature, and
yeah.
You drive a 911, let's say an S or just even a regular 911 of this generation. 4S, we have a 4S Cabriolet. Great car, but
doesn't feel as raw as
this is as raw as it gets, while it doesn't seem like it's compromising anything. The newest GT3 RS, if we're going to compare that to this, right? So the 992, we have one in the Ruby Star. I mean, this is usable. You have a trunk, you still have the front trunk, you still have...
Yeah, the new
you don't
one's
have the crazy air.
fans.
Yeah, the new one's just cooling fans. You have no trunk space. The aero is absurd. This you could still kind of get away with driving around town.
Yep.
And, it's just a 911 with a wing. But it's still, obviously, those who know what it is know what it is. But...
And even if you got this in a more subdued color and you didn't get the graphics pack, people would just think it's a 911 with a wing.
Yeah, a lot of people take the stickers off the side or the decals. I happen to like this color scheme.
I do too. There's a lot of great colors. I think my favorite might be the maritime blue, but I don't know. I can't remember all of the color schemes, but there was a lot of really cool color options that you could get with this car. Even like the red, like the Guards red, I've seen a couple of them with the gold accents. I think that looks really good too. Clutch is a little bit stiffer than my car.
A little bit. It's also a little bit faster than your car. Are you going to do any upgrades to your car?
Just going to drop a 4-liter in it. Yeah, I mean, I think this car will ultimately go down as one of the best driver's cars of the early 2000s.
Yeah.
I mean,
I would agree, and I think this is, like we were saying, if we look back at the 60s of the late 50s or 60s of Porsche with the 4-cam cars, right? Like the Carrera 2s. I think, obviously those values are incredible, and those are the most desired of that example. I think that you're only going to see this continue to grow.
Yeah.
And the great part about this car too is a lot of the cars people are afraid to drive because adding miles on them is going to affect the value. I really don't see that with this car. I mean, I'm not an expert. I'm not Donald. I don't know what truly is going to happen to values by driving them, but I think there's certain cars that no matter what the mileage is, they're just going to, hold their value so well because of the experience they provide, this being one of them.
I agree, and I think that's one of the, bigger positives of Porsche or like Porsche collecting. Like, a lot of times people are, there are these, you see them on Bring a Trailer that come up with, 87 miles and they go for a bajillion dollars. But most people are not really afraid to drive these because you actually can drive these. It's actually better to drive them than to not drive them.
Yeah, a lot of people who buy Carrera GTs actually look for higher mileage ones. And by higher mileage, I mean, anywhere from 5 to 15,000 mile cars. Because those are the ones that tend to, those are the ones that have been looked after. The ones that have been serviced. A lot of people don't service their cars if they sit around.
100%.
And
I would prefer to, if I ever had the means to buy one of these, I would want one that had probably higher miles with service records and proof of actual use, and it doesn't really matter. Then you can actually go and drive it, opposed to the 500-mile example that you're like, I don't know if I want to
worry about it.
Get this over a certain amount of miles.
Yeah.
And also what I love about this, at least this car, and now we have the overcomplication of cars with all of the buttons on the steering wheels and stuff to connect your phone and constantly be connected,
right?
Which, like, we're as a society, we're very connected now, but
this is a leave your phone at home, go for a drive car.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just one of those things. I mean, I often am searching for the biggest way to be connected to the vehicle. That's why I enjoy motorcycles so much, because it's the one time, you know, you have your helmet on and you're not looking at your phone, and I definitely have a phone addiction.
Yeah, we all do. I mean, it doesn't matter. Everyone does.
Well,
Anyone who says they don't,
any of that when I'm driving this.
No, you don't care. You don't care if you get an email. You don't care because it just provides that experience. How does this rate? You've driven a fair amount of the collection cars, Porsches, whatever. Where would you rate this as far as some of the cars that you've driven?
I mean, this is definitely up there. I mean, Porsches in general, or just
just in general.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the best. I mean, I'm always talking about how good steering feeling is. I mean, you really do feel all the vibrations and everything through the steering wheel. Clutch-wise, I mean, the clutch, yeah, it's stiff, but like it's easy to downshift, and like it gives you confidence to get it in gear. The shifter's amazing. Driving experience, it's a really good car.
Yeah.
I think I have driven the 991 GT3 RS.
Mm-hmm.
I think that out of all of them, just because of the power, is the scariest. Like, yes, this is a fast car. Feels very fast. That
You're talking about the lizard green one?
No, the GT3 RS.
Oh, the GT2. I'm sorry.
That car just like feels like a death trap to me. This actually feels like usable.
Yeah. That car does. I mean, it does and it doesn't to me. I think this car feels. I guess because this revs so much higher.
It's so loud. 5,800 RPM.
Yeah, 5,800 is not even anything in this car.
It's just like.
You're waking your neighbors up, let's just put it that way. And that's the point. I mean, I'm sorry, it just is.
It's like, it's so stupid, but in like the best way possible.
In the absolute best way possible, because it doesn't drone, it doesn't do any of that. It's loud where it should be loud.
Oh, God. Every time I drive something like this, whenever I am in the middle of driving it, I'm very much enjoying it, and then when I get out, I'm just so eternally tortured.
I know. It's like, I'm poor.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, that's what you see. Is you see the value of these cars reflect in what you get, and there's only so many cars that can provide this.
Yeah.
And you know, lucky for us, we have a wide variety of them. And,
yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things. We try to translate it through video, but
it's near impossible.
It's impossible, but it's also like we're so lucky that we get to experience it, and it's one of those things that it's so hard to capture that feeling.
Yeah.
And it just makes you feel so special.
Yeah.
Like, this is such a privilege to drive this car and to actually experience it. I mean, if I had this, I would drive it every day.
I would daily drive this car. You and I would be arrested, but it would be okay. Because it's also one of those cars that, and I had this issue with the when I had the M2. It's just, you can't drive it slow.
Yeah.
It's just because it just sounds so good, and it just wants to go. And you know, the clutch being stiff, it's meant to go. You know?
Oh, yeah.
And the ST has this very similar clutch in that regard, where it just, boop, you need to go. Same with the Carrera GT, same with, you know, it's... These are go cars.
It's just like so easy to heel and toe.
Yep.
So sorry, I couldn't talk while I was accelerating there. It's pulling on the back of my vocal cords.
You got to 25 really fast.
Oh, yeah. You mentioned the ST, and I haven't driven the ST
I haven't driven it yet either.
But I just saw Chris Harris's review of it, and he was saying that it was one of the best 911s he's ever driven. And actually, he thought it was better than the 997.240, which is the step up from this car with just the larger engine.
He likes that engine more than the Metzger.
He does.
Yeah.
He does. That being said, yes,
because it's stripped.
997 is my favorite gen, but I really like what they did with the 992 in terms of its feeling. It very much feels like it feels more like a 997 than a 991 does. I think with the 991, they were still trying to figure out the electronic steering.
Yeah.
The electronic steering in the 992, I just drove the Spider RS.
Yeah.
Which, okay, that is not a 992.
Sure, but it gives a similar feel.
Shares the same technology.
Yeah.
The steering feeling in that car was actually really, really good and felt
it's insane.
Almost as good as this.
It's yeah, I mean, it is insane how good it is. There's no questioning that. And no matter what, if we're very much nitpicking the very small details, right?
Yeah. So loud. Oh my god. That flywheel is so light that like getting a perfect downshift is harder than it is in a normal car.
Yep.
But that being said, it's much at higher speed. A higher speed downshift is easier than a slower speed downshift. The throttle response is so good too.
Yeah, you can see me.
Yeah, it's just this would not be a good car to take your girlfriend or wife in if they're car sick.
Or if they don't like cars.
You're like, what'd you say? My favorite part of a 911 is on a day like today where it's actually fairly cold, they still have plenty of grip.
Plenty. I mean this is
rear-wheel
Cup
drive
2s
car,
on it.
We have Cup 2s. Okay, we're not going hammering it.
They're
through
still
the turns,
cold.
But it still grips up fine. I mean, if this was a Mercedes AMG or something like that, I mean, we would be spinning all day.
100%.
And that's what's so great about Porsche and these cars. Less horsepower. We talked about that before. But you're using all the horsepower, and it's putting all the horsepower down. What's the point of a 600 or 700 horsepower car if you're just spinning it through first through third? I mean, that was half throttle, and we still hooked up really nicely there.
Car's good.
Well, Sean,
dream car territory.
Dream car territory.
Yeah, like we said, this is definitely one of those cars that I'm going to own at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll figure it out. It's a figure it out car.
Maybe ABS could do a a timeshare GT3 RS.
I'll have to keep the keys in my house.
Keep the keys in your house. You could also, like, to avoid having Ben and I drive it, you could like lock the seat in position so it's
just
further
all
back.
the way back. Yeah, there would be no problem.
Then we wouldn't be able to drive.
Drill it to the floor.